meet people who have been appointed or who are appointed under the tenure of the previous government, I may tend to
element of mistrust.
Exactly, want to be sure, are these really guys for me or they are not for me? And so in partisan democracies, it's everywhere. Look at what is happening in America under Donald Trump. He comes in and then he's sacking everyone. America is just one of the countries that now started with multi-party democracy strongly before trying very strong civil service administration systems. And we all know that the challenges that they face. Up to date, they still have the problem of multi-party control over the civil service at the topmost. And so once you have this particular political system of strong multi-party competitive democracies trying to operate and work with civil servants, you are going to have that kind of problem.
I think this morning I need to be careful. The depth of knowledge being espoused here, if I'm not careful, will see me from an angle of questions, because, for instance, in your response, you have mentioned the issue about trust when the government comes to power, right, to meet somebody who was employed in the tenure of an opposition party, and whether the person would be personally able to discharge the mandate of this new government and of them. But before we get there, Nana, how many years did you serve in office as the head of service?
Almost 10 years.
A decade. That's wonderful.
Less than a decade.
Almost a decade. Yeah. So I wanted to find out from you that in your tenure of office, how has this principle of neutrality, permanence, and what have you evolved? If you're not careful, people might think that there's a new baby that has been born, and we are now trying to wash and dress it. But how has it evolved over the past years?
I think these concepts have been there right from the beginning, since the civil service was established long time and under colonial administration. The principles have always existed, and when we always mention people like Nathan Kwao, the Debras and all that. So all these things have always been there. I think why it's come to the fore now is one, because of CLOSACs taking this matter to court and then establishing specifically a program which focuses consistently on this neutrality business. So that in terms of this evolution, I don't really see anything new. The principles as espoused have always been the same. I think one of the major that we forget is that, as Doc said rightly, the multi-party thing, which came in when we are trying to establish strong bureaucracy, is an issue. But also the military interventions also have a very critical role to play in terms of fishing systems and principles. So that can also adversely affect some of these. But I always say this, truly, that we have a Supreme Court that has ruled not only on this. I remember during President Mills' time, a chief director was removed improperly, and the Supreme Court ruled that it cannot be done. So in terms of the institutional settings and all that, it's there. I will still insist, in spite of what Prof said about the competitive things and the lack of trust, that is basically a human thing. If I don't know you, first time you come into an environment, everybody, it's natural. Are these people there? So that's to be expected. I've seen a chief director who was said to have been pro one party, and there was even an agenda to remove through one of the transitional process things. I heard these things. Now, when that minister and started working, this chief director had already taken the manifesto of the party and had developed what I call the skeletons of memos, policies that was supposed to be was in the manifestos of these things. And as soon as the minister settled, he sent this minister these draft skeletons to say, look, based on your manifesto, I've seen this, like the British people do, like the Canadians do. The moment the countries bring about their manifestos, they take them. So as head of state, one of the things that we really encourage people to do, I think several times once about election time, we went to the head offices of the various political parties, those who are willing, and asked for their manifestos to be distributed. Some of them will give us the soft copies. Of course, there was a problem whether soft copy, the next time you realize things have changed, even after the last. But I'm saying, so I'm talking of principles being established. So this chief director who was supposed to be pro WW party, suddenly this minister kept up to my brother. When he retired, the minister came back and wanted this guy on contract. Because though he came with a certain understanding perspective, this guy proved to be a merit-based, consummate professional. And he was one of those guys when we did a chief director performance agreement, he was coming up tops. So, yes, I know about suspicions, I know about lack of trust, I know that take it or leave it. In every, there will be hawks. I understand that. But I'm saying it becomes much more difficult when you are prophet. Number two, which is very important, we ourselves must also behave properly. We tend to look at politicians. At times, during the election, you have exposed yourself. You are behaving in such a manner that it's almost impossible for Minister Y or Party X to work with you because of your own behavior. So that is also another side of the equation that we should not forget. Yes, politicians will always, what is the essence of politics? The essence of the politics is the ability to control, to manage, to influence. That is what they're expected to do. If they don't do that, they're not a good politician. That's a fact.
Good. I agree with you, because the responsibility of ensuring adherence to this principle is not one-sided.
Yes.
Because there's this principle of neutrality,
Good.
the principle of anonymity, which to some extent is a burden or a responsibility of the civil servants. So, of enshrining
of the civil service staff.
Oh, the service staff. Sorry. So my issue is that if you look at what shapes the life of man, principles, norms, customs, traditions, non-adherence to some of these things. I'm not looking at it from the angle of the politician alone, but from both angles. How would non-adherence to these principles undermine the efficiency of the government structure or the civil service? Maybe you don't come from academic perspective.
Right, so first, certainly as a civil servant, you have been put there to serve Ghana first, or the country first. And so whichever government comes into power, you have no legal right. Let me come from that dimension, because legally you've been put there to serve the country. So you have no right to say, I will no longer serve, because the people have voted for a government with a manifesto or with a set of promises that the people expect to be implemented. And so for you as our public servant who finds yourself within the civil service, as a civil servant who is supposed to serve everyone, your job is to serve whichever government comes to power or comes into office. You are to serve the public at the end of the day. And as Nana rightly noted, you don't even have to wait for a minister now to come and then tell you that I have come in as a minister and these are my manifesto kind of policies, or these are the areas that I expect you to actually work on. Once a party wins power, immediately you have to be proactive in identifying the sectorial policy proposals that have been put in a manifesto, so that you get yourself ready with very good proposals submitted to the minister for, and so it is not, it does not lie with any chief director or top or lower level civil servant to say, well, I didn't vote for this party, I did not vote for this particular government, and so as for me, I cannot work with the person, or I'm not ready to work with the person. Then in that case, as the Supreme Court's ruling also makes clear, then you have to find your way out. Because the ruling was clear that you don't have to be partisan. So if you want to be partisan, then that is not a place for you. You have to find maybe a partisanization actually to join. That means that the values that you are supposed to uphold, you have abdicated that responsibility. And so then you have to find your way out.
So let me just add something. See, when you talk of neutrality, what do we mean? What we mean is simply that NPPO, NDC, you will serve as a profession.
Okay.
It also means that you don't go, self as you have been appointed a minister by party Y. Yeah, goes in and starts undermining Nana to self as. That is not neutrality. You see, those are some of the problems. So before even you, the minister, settles, Apia has come around to say, you don't know Nana, this man, he was a hardcore when he was in school, blah, blah, blah. That is not neutrality. Neutrality is not just about being professional in terms of your work, but it's also in terms of your attitude. I don't know whether the current head of sales is going through, but one of the challenges that I faced was really when a new minister comes in and we want to post, let's say, a chief director or somebody, then he'll come and tell you, Nana, this one I can't work with. They say he's this. Who said? He said the people in the office. And the Bible says something about in the last days people having itchy ears, so that they will not listen to the word of God, but they will listen to lies and stories like that. Yes, and stuff like that. So that's one of the biggest problems of this whole neutrality. You see, we tend to look at it in terms of just functionality, but one of the ways in which we as the civil service don't behave neutrally is when you go undermining leadership, undermining this, and several times. And that was the biggest thing. So also, I'm prepared to work. I'm saying, they'll come and I'll tell, but you're a politician, you've been in this business for some time. Why do you start your basis or your office in terms of lies or gossip? Now with the anonymity business, you see, the key thing here is that you give advice. You send options, but you are not emotionally attached to it. One of the major problems at times for us is that I send my proposal to Minister Cephas. He looks at it. He has his own political colleague. Every political party, they have their political things at the look at the thing, and then you say no. Your team may be sound. But anonymity means you are not seen or heard openly unless your political leadership has given an opportunity. So you're saying that the man says, the woman says, no. This is not, we want this target. What do you do as a professional? You've given your views correctly, factual, research-based analysis. If he makes that decision when we know that civil service, what they are supposed to do is say, then can you minute on it? So that it's minutes and the thing is there. It shows clearly that you have done it. So then those principles come. But what you have is a situation where chief directors and ministers are competing with their ministers. They want to be seen. How?
Maybe for the reward system, who knows? We're talking about neutrality here, we're talking about anonymity here. Yes. But the point is that he wants permanence. And the permanence is that every time that comes into power must recognize that he's a result-oriented person, isn't it?
No, permanence is not guaranteed by the politician.
Okay.
No. Permanence is guaranteed by the system. The civil service law guarantees that. The constitution guarantees that. The public services, human resources, all these things, they are guaranteed. You see, let's be honest. Civil service and local government service, changes in government. How many people have really lost their jobs? How many? I mean, you can't just use one or two as a basis. It doesn't really happen in the civil service and the local governments. It doesn't happen. Because the system ensures permanence. So permanence is not secured by the politicians. No. I was appointed MSD staff I was there, I worked in MSD 20-something years. I gave my advice. The case, when you arise, you go to cabinet, the organization structure that has been proposed, you disagree, you do that. So the permanence is not by a politician. I think part of the problem is we as a civil servant, we do what we call censorship. You censor yourself.
Yeah.
Instead of being who you are, you are trying to do something, thinking that the system
to please somebody.
The system does not ensure, the politician does not ensure, and I think if civil service staff will agree with that principle, that their permanence is based on the law, is based on system that are established. How many times have you heard anybody that are trying to sack a civil service thing without due process and winning? They won't win.
Don't win.
It doesn't happen.
Thank you. If you have not tuned in, you are missing a lot. In fact, this is more like a civil service faculty with professors and the doctors, espousing their knowledge and expertise. And you better join us. We'll take a commercial break, and we'll wish you to stay tuned. We'll get back to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Researching the Civil Service. Today, our discussion is centered on the way forward as far as neutrality, anonymity, and permanence in the civil service is concerned. How do we ensure a politically colored civil service? As usual, Jukum Jamina, former immediate past head of service or head of the civil service, and Dr. Apia, a lecturer from UGBS. I'm your host, Cephas Dosu. And so I think I'll need to start from you, Nana. What you perceive could be the consequence when the principle of neutrality is compromised?
Thank you, Cephas. One of the biggest consequences of neutrality is that we don't get good and sound advice.
Yeah.
You don't get good sound, which then imparts policy, other policy formulation, policy implementation, and policy monitoring and evaluation, which then is a cost to those in the nation. So while agreeing that the civil service must be neutral, I also hope that the politicians, hopefully we'll get some of them to listen to this thing, must realize that when people are not neutral, then they tend to become puppets. And when they are puppets, then you don't get the best out of them.
They give you what you want.
They give you what they want. And remember, any policy can be. So for me, the biggest thing is that. The second thing about impact of not being neutral is that professionalism is sacrificed. It's sacrificed. Performance is also sacrificed, because if I get the impression that now I know this is what my minister wants, this is what he wants me to say, this is what the president wants, this is what the chief of staff wants me to say, then I just say it. I won't even research. So the performance of the service then is adversely compromised. And for me, that is my biggest worry. You know me, I'm a performance management person. So my biggest worry is about not having the civil service performing optimally because they are being politically compromised. And this also, either it's a career civil servant or even those that they bring in somewhere, that which I'm sure will come to, because then it affects everybody. So for me, those are the two things that, as far as I'm concerned, the fact that we may not get correct policies formulated, good implementation, and then the professional things compromise. For me, that really is the biggest.
So you realize that these principles do not just operate in a vacuum.
Yeah.
You need stakeholders or players to ensure that they achieve their intended purposes. So I wanted to find out, what do you see, maybe Doc can help us in this angle, should be the role of identified stakeholders, for instance, the presidency, the politician, the civil servant, the Public Services Commission, the Office of the Head of Civil Service, all these institutions. What are the roles of these in ensuring that these principles are adhered to?
Right.
Because, for instance, if a civil servant becomes politically colorful, it means that neutrality is not there. If the politician also appoints somebody into a civil service post based on political allegiance, it means that permanence and neutrality is also not being enshrined. So what you perceive should be the role of these stakeholders?
Right, Cephas, I think all the stakeholders must recognize that the stability of the state itself depends on citizens having a strong perception and experience that those who have been put into office to serve everyone, regardless of political affiliation, they are actually delivering their job. Because we've seen the country that started trying to build a civil service on a partisan line, and here I'm particularly interested in the United States. And we've seen how it cost even the life of a president. Because at the end of the day, once you come in and then you are appointing people on the basis of partisanship and then dismissing people from office on the basis of partisanship, then at the end of the day, as Nana said, one, you will not get the best. At the same time, you are creating political instability or grounds for political instability. Because those who have been kicked out of the system, not for lack of performance, will now gang up against you, and then will find a way of getting you two out of office, not on the grounds of performance, you two, but on the fact that you are partisan and then you don't like them. And so at the end of the day, for the country to be stable, for people to have trust and confidence that their needs will be met, that they will be served by the civil service, it is very, very important that all the stakeholders must protect those who work in a very neutral, non-partisan manner, and rather expose or take out and push away those who rather will want to undermine the system in a very partisan manner. Of course, this is very difficult for politicians or people who have been elected on political party platforms to appreciate. But it is very important for and then politicians to recognize that within the state there are different organizations and then different boundaries, and that at the topmost is the executive. Of course, there are it is filled through elections or partisan games, but then at the level of the civil service, the only way that the politician can get the very best from the civil service is to help them to maintain the neutrality that Nana was talking about. If you undermine that, you can't get the best out of them. It is just like undermining the neutrality of a judicial service and then still expecting that if you get a case or your family member gets a case and then get to that particular judicial system, the person is going to get a fair hearing and a fair ruling. Certainly it's not going to happen. In the same way, if you undermine the neutrality of the civil service, and then when they are now distributing goods or they are serving people, and you come from particular political persuasion which is not in power, will you have the confidence that you are going to be served? If they are, implementing policies that have to do with allocation of scholarship schemes or the allocation of some kind of project, and at the end of the day you come from an opposition political party, will you even have the confidence to come to a particular ministry or a civil service organization and then ask to be served? And so it is incumbent on all the players to rise up and defend the neutrality and non-partisan nature of the civil service. That's the only way that we can do it.
Let me have your take on this.
Yes.
I mean,
let's take it. You see, you talk of commissions. The Civil Service Council is supposed to be the governing body. I believe sincerely that we need a council that will be able to stand up and say that when the head of civil service comes with information, or the office of the head of civil council with that ministry has appointed, through whatever means, somebody who is not civil service and is income. The Civil Service Council must be able to rise up and do something about it. They must be able to go to the minister, they must be able to go to the president, because that's the governing board, and say this will kill performance. It's inconsistent with neutrality, it's inconsistent. So, in that, a more aggressive civil service council, a more passionate and a more focused. You see, the composition of the civil service council for me is very important. They cannot perform if you have people who don't have understanding of these principles. Yeah. So that's the first. So you're talking of rules. The role of a council will matter based on the knowledge of the people we put there. It should not just be one of those people. No, there should be people who have an understanding of the system. Because remember, this country has survived because of the civil service. Take it or leave it. In between transitions, political transitions, it's a civil service. When there was a military, and it was a civil service. So the civil service, you see, one of the things that people realize is when His Excellency the President decided that during the COVID time, that what do we call it? When we're not going to lockdown, everybody has forgotten that the first people in this country that gave directives as to how that lockdown principle was the civil service. Indeed, we were the first organization. In less than 24 hours, we were able to issue directives as to how this thing will work in the civil service. Everything. If you look at the directive from Public Service Commission and from the Office of the Chief of Staff, everything was just, the only thing that had been removed was the civil service. I'm trying to say, if you didn't have a professional, proactive, permanent structure that was confident, that was capable, want to serve the people of Ghana. So I just took out Civil Service Council. It's just particular, but one of the major organizations should be the Public Service Commission. You see, the Public Service Commission is one, by law, it's a permanent organization. It's an independent body. And it's been given the mandate of ensuring that the highest standards public service are maintained. I expect that the Public Service Commission will come more into this equation and then ensure when the information is passed on, because their interface with the presidency is supposed to be such that the advice will be taken. The interface with the Council of State. And so, yes, when I talk of Civil Service Council, I'm saying the same thing for the Local Government Service Council. It's the same thing. And then you also want to make sure that the Labour Commission will also play its role of educating matters quickly. And of course, eventually, the judiciary so far has been very solid on behalf of the service in general. So that one is okay. But I think the in-house business council and the Public Service Commission in particular should be a bit more, I think should be a bit more proactive in dealing with some of these things. When it becomes open and it's obvious, I don't think we should wait. You can begin litigation and they can advise the president and say that this, because as head of sales, I think there are a few cases where we had a few challenges on ministers, that what you done was improper. So the people were never confirmed. But you know, politicians have got other means. People got other means of paying without necessarily going through the system, because you have to get a letter of appointment from the civil service through a council and all that. So once we said no, they'll find that. So there you have the PSC and other people coming to ensure that all of us will. So yes, I agree with you. We must, but every institution has got its own particular function that they must. I think have a stronger, a more independent public service commission will go forward.
Price you that the Public Services Commission has been very silent, especially with regards to the appointment of someone who is perceived should have exhibited his political colors as registrar of a civil service institution.
No, there are two now. We had one under the previous administration.
Yeah.
That
issue went to court.
That closer went to court. Yeah. But before closer had gone to court, we had that's what I was civil service. The Civil Service Council had decided that they're not going to go ahead with the processing. So you see, that is the civil service. And we gave our reasons why we think that should, because we thought that this one was a career post which should be. The problem currently with the register in particular is the nature of the law. You see, we need to have to. I agree with that. Straightforward, we should not accept where career paths are compromised. But the nature of the law, the new Birth and Death Act, you see, there's a problem there. The problem talked of the president appointing the registrar based in consultation with the governing council. However, in the act, there is no governing council. And in practice, whenever there is no governing council, the ministry then acts as a governing council. But the problem, that's a law lacuna. That was a problem with this, but if you look at the law, it's there.
Okay, so let me help you.
Yes.
I'm holding the
Birth and Death thing.
Registration of Birth and Death Act 2020, Act 1027, and the act is on registration of births and deaths, and in part the appointment of the registrar of births and deaths is also a subsection under this act.
Yes,
and what it says,
what does it say?
That's section 2, appointment of the registrar of births and deaths, and it says the registry shall have a register of births and deaths. The president shall, in accordance with Article 195 of the Constitution, appoint the registrar. In accordance with Article 195.
If you're going through a governing council. No, go on. You can't end there.
Okay.
See, that's a problem. You can't end there.
And 3, the president shall, in appointing a person as a registrar, have regard to the relevant academic qualification, experience, and knowledge of that person in civil administration. 4, the registrar shall hold office on the terms and conditions specified in the letter of appointment.
Which is the standard thing.
But then you realize that the key reference is the Constitution, which is 195.
What is 195? The 195.
And 195 says that. So you realize that
the law.
Which one?
The law that you are dealing with.
Okay, so the 195 says that subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or to act in an office in the public services shall vest in the president, but then acting in accordance with the advice of the governing council of the service concerned. In this appointment, so you realize that the Register of Births and Deaths Act, as far as the Constitution is concerned, the basis is that Article 195, which says that in accordance with the advice of the Governing Council, and 2, what do you call it? With the advice of the Governing Council and in consultation with the Public Services Commission.
Yeah.
But then you realize that at the time of the appointment of this gentleman, there was no.
Yeah, but I think I explained to you that.
Then 2 is that the Public Service Commission, that was what I was asking whether you are surprised with the deafening silence of the Public Service Commission, because I was expecting that they would have made some pronouncement to say, okay, they've been consulted and they gave their.
No. I think the guy is acting. It's the principle. Let's do this by principles. The principle has always been that the president will appoint somebody in acting position. So when that is done, then you go through the process of the PSC working with the council to either approve or disapprove. In other words, process the president, they send it back to the president. The president, if they find the person not qualified, and happens. You see, the problem with this particular law, that was what I was trying to explain to you. The framing of this law makes it as if it's a different entity from the civil service. If you go to there's a start by this act, a births and deaths registry, first as the registry, and it comprises, it say offices located, blah blah blah. There's nowhere in this act that says that's part of the civil service. See, that is a problem. There's nowhere in this act that says it is part of the civil service. The only thing that we were able to, when we were acting, was that, look, as long as this act did not make provision for a governing council, and the only governing council that this organization was associated with is a civil service council. So if anything at all, it should go through the Civil Service Council. And the argument then was that in the absence of a governing council, the ministry, I'm just trying to explain that why PSC can, the ministry should then stand in as a governing council. That was the argument. PSC doesn't come in because PSC only comes in when staff are sent to them for processing. But that is a reactive approach. The proactive approach should be that we are the ones who have established the standards. Therefore, if we establish the standards and the standards are not being followed, then we will call attention to all the parties in this. So, but generally, traditionally, PSC, and they don't come out openly. Even if they make a pronouncement, they don't come out openly. PSC has always been doing this behind the scenes so that it is not seen to be creating confusion. So, I don't know whether the PSC came out interacted with the head of service or the office of the president. I can't say that. But in our case, we had this understanding, and PSC did not even go ahead to process the earlier ones. So while they did not come out to say it, through understanding, they did not process the other one, the earlier one.
So we're looking at the responsibilities of stakeholders in enshrining the principles. And one of the principles has to do with permanence.
Yes.
And so, to what extent will this appointment endure, the appointment of the registrar, endure the principle of permanence? And because you realize that one of the, attributes of permanence, there's growth, there's progression. And by virtue of the fact that there's a career position and somebody's been put on top of them, how do you see the effects on progression and, to a large extent, upholding the principles?
Let me say this. I've said it already. I'm always against the principle of imposing somebody at the top. It's not good because it discourages people. Professionalism is lost, spread the core, and all those principles are lost. So as a matter, when I come to an organization, I expect to be able to rise to the top. I expect to be professional, to develop my skills and competence. So in that sense, that in putting somebody at the top, apart from the political neutrality or whatever, non-neutral, I think it's also a discouragement to the staff. So if it's a discouragement, then that should not take the place. So that for me, it endures the concept of permanence, because there are two different. Permanence simply means that you will remain in office, you work through your systems, through the schemes of service, you will not be removed for non-performance or values thing. So in that case, it does not endure the permanence thing. The only thing that it starts the issue of progression at the top, and that can affect people's performance, that can affect people's behavior. It's also a challenge to the existing value system. So that's the way I say it. I don't know what I want to say.
All right.
So before you come in, Nana, when you were saying that this person was appointed in an acting capacity.
Position, yes.
But then the Constitution has not mentioned acting position. Appointment is an appointment. And the point is that by virtue of the fact that they're occupying post, I'm sure if it's acting, the benefit that goes with the post you would enjoy it. Okay. Again, also the fact that if the Constitution talks about appointment, couldn't any within a career person be appointed there in an acting capacity? Because I know in the condition of service you have acting allowance and that kind of thing. In that case, that person will be enjoying his own salary and get an allowance or that kind of thing. But maybe doc, you can
when it finishes. I can.
So the thing is that from the legal perspective,
okay,
you know, once the law has put the power of appointment into the hands of the president, at the end of the day, that is what the law is. Okay? And so it goes through a process. It goes through a process. And the process is that until your appointment is confirmed by council and whatever other relevant authorities that be, you are in an acting position. And once again, as I said, it's like, you know, creating a political system of governance where a new government comes in. And for the new government that has come in, if you look at the Presidential Transition Act, already once a new government comes in, there are some organizations and then some boards and other places where they dissolve. They are dissolved, you know, once the old government actually loses power. And so until new members are appointed and then those councils or boards constituted, of course, every appointment will have to be in an acting capacity. But for me, what is more important here...
Before you continue, let me bring some clarity as far as the Constitution says. The 195 talks about the fact that subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or to act in this.
Yeah.
So the acting cannot be something that cannot be subject to law. The same Constitution talks about the fact that even to act, it must be in accordance with the the council, and on advice of the advice of the council, in accordance with the Public Service Commission. And so this law must be adhered to. So in this case, I mean, that is where my problem is. And I'm saying that if that's what the Constitution says, what has been the position of a key stakeholder like the Public Service Commission, like the Office of the Head of Civil Service? Because even though they said, like you call the actual, the Best and Registration Act, that's not the institution as a civil service institution.
It has to.
Because, you see, if you go through, at least the appointment of the registrar is subject to Article 195.
Which is a standard for every
standard. Exactly. And so, be it a civil service institution or not, was this article adhered to? And we are looking at the role of stakeholders in ensuring that these principles are adhered to. So what do we have to say about this?
I think, Cephas, I think that you have to look at the laws in totality. Because the Constitution, at the same time, is on the foundations of the Constitution that the Presidential Transition Act was also enacted. It's on the same foundations that the Births and Deaths Registry Act has also been enacted. And so at the end of the day, the Births and Deaths Registry Act is not illegal. The Presidential Transition Act too is not illegal. You have to look at all of them in totality. The most important point is that even before the appointment of this current registrar, COSAC and then some stakeholders had opposed the previous government's appointment of the previous registrar on the grounds that the person was also politically tainted. And so here, the most important issue is not that some legal rule or procedure has not been followed, because certainly they have followed whatever they have to follow. But the fact that the person who has been appointed currently, once again, per the Supreme Court's ruling, if you are to look at it in the general perspective, is a politically exposed or politically tainted person, and the civil service or COSAC expects that that is a career position and someone from within should have been appointed. And so, but the most important point that I even want to make here is that for civil service positions, once you give the power appointment to the president, for me, in a partisan president, it removes and undermines the permanent stand, because a partisan president needs to be there legally 4 years to re-election. And then if that president or party loses power and then a new party comes in, of course, then they also have the power to appoint. If the occupant of the office at the end of the day has not done anything even bad, and then they want to retain the person in office, of course, it is their right to retain the person in office. But the most important point for me here is that it should not be a president who should be given the authority or power to appoint people into civil service positions. On the same premise, I find it troubling for me to find that even Civil Service Act itself, the appointment or a director, you still have got, if you look at section 19 and section 22 of it, you still have got a rule there for the president. Of course, the Civil Service Council, the head of office and the Civil Service Council will require someone at the end of the day, that's a chief director, to be put into that position. But the fact that the law itself make a provision for a partisan president to have a say there, I have a problem with it, because it undermines the principle of permanence. It undermines the principle. My point is that we should not have a role for the president when it comes to the appointment of either a director or a chief director or any civil service post. Otherwise, it undermines the principle of permanence in a multi-party democracy. And that's why I support the position earlier that Nana made, that we should have a civil service council, or the civil service council itself should be composed of people who are knowledgeable, who have the clout, who know what they're about, and who should be able to defend this kind of matters. When it comes to the appointment of chief directors, or registrar of Births and Deaths Registry, why can't it be in the hands of a civil service council? Why can't they do it? We recognize that we are in a multi-party democracy, and that the president who comes in there certainly is from a particular, partisan persuasion, and is not going to be there permanently. And so, at the end of the day, we have to then put the appointment of the bureaucratic elite into the hands of an independent, a neutral, and non-partisan body. But once we don't do that, and we find a role for the president, and the president into the legal processes, and then doing that, then we don't also, at the end of the day, there's up and cry, because we have sat down and then allow rules that have been created and given room now for the president now to undermine the very permanent institution that we want to be permanent at the end of the day.
Okay, so Nana, before you come in traditional settings, and say that you don't go to the farm on Tuesdays. When you go, you are hauled before the king, and sometimes you are fined some sheep or some goats or whatever it is. So you realize that to ensure adherence to principles, norms, and traditions, and what have you, there are sanctions. Currently, with all the discussion we're having, realize that, fine, the Constitution says this. The Constitution has given responsibility to certain institutions also to play some roles in adherence to these principles. But there are no sanctions. Do you think we need sanctions? Or you think that there are some policy directions?
For who?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how do we ensure adherence? So, do we need an intervention of some kind of policy direction or something?
Okay. Let me, before we get sanction business. So I think there are fundamental things that we need to agree here. Number one, the civil service is part of the executive.
Okay.
It's not independent of the executive. It's part of the executive. So if it's part of the executive, then the president has a responsibility for being part of the appointing process. Personally, I don't have a problem. So that's one area I disagree with. I disagree with you. That's one. The second thing, even in UK, at Margaret Thatcher times, you go through all the process of appointment of a permanent secretary. Then Margaret Thatcher will ask this question: is she one of us? It's documented. It's documented. Is she one of us? He didn't know whether it was as conservative or Labour. No. What Thatcher was doing reverse. So is she or she one of us means is the person reform-minded? Not reform-minded. The president, Margaret Thatcher, will not, because if she doesn't approve, it will not go forward. So you see, we should not behave like it's only here. It's all over the world. If you look at the history of Singapore, where they are, the president had a hand in appointment of permanent. It's there. It is there. The prime minister.
I agree with you. You spoke about the processes.
Yes, I'm just trying to make the point that he says that. So the president per se be involved. I think the problem is, do we, as the other actors, play our role properly so that we will advise the. If PSC by now called the attention of the presidency, because the problem with this law, and we said this, the way it is written, anybody can interpret it to mean that this is not part of the service. Indeed, if you go back to the thing, at the end, it says staff of the births and deaths register in existing before the coming into of this shall be absorbed into the births and deaths register as established, and that is it's effectively, and that's the language they use for all the services that they have created. If you go, so the ministers were interpreting this to mean that birth and death is separate. We in the civil service are arguing that based on the fact that there's no governing council, then it is part of the civil service. So that's what the problem is. So I think this is a particular problem which somebody must solve by defining it properly, going back to Parliament. But now let's issue of sanctions.
When is it sanctions? But that's sanctions of policies that we need to put in place too.
Sanctions will be based on policies.
Okay.
Now these organizations that you talk about, PSC, there are already systems in place. If PSC makes a comment and this is not consistent, they can go to the Labour Commission. They can even go to the Supreme Court. Civil Service Council. So it's not a matter of sanctions. It's more of enforcement. It's more of enforcement. So it's not sanction per se, because you can't sanction PSC for that. You can't sanction the Civil Service Council. It's virtually a voluntary thing. They are not paid salaries and stuff like that. So we can't force anybody. So I don't think sanctions is a best. There are already these regulations that are already in the system. So people have a way in which they could deal with. The problem is we are not active enough to activate this. If Closer had not gone to court on this neutrality business, we could not be quoting it now. But by virtue of they are going to court, it's become an issue. So has pronounced on it. So it's quite clear it is there. Some of these nuanced things, can either be tested in court or the various organizations that are supposed to. That's what PSC, what I'm saying is, Civil Service Council did not process the other lady under the MPP. I know if we had a council, they may not also process this one. But beyond that, you see, there are things that happen. How are these people paid? Who pays them? When the Auditor General goes and there's no letter from the governing council, why should they accept the transactions that they have been made by these organizations? I mean, there are other ways that, because the law is quite clear, you must be appointed formally. The governing council has not processed you. So your stay there, is it legal or it's not legal? The acting thing that you define, it's a matter of definition. Somebody say the acting means you can act until PSC and the council processes you. Somebody can say, because in civil service, we appoint people to act. Sometimes we don't even go back to the president. When a head of organization retires, the head of civil service just writes and says, you're senior most, and then you act. Nobody goes to PSC for that acting position. So you see, it's going to be very contentious for you to say that the president cannot do that acting position. But all the acting ones that the head of civil service has done is illegal.
Oh, I think the Constitution gives you the right, because the president can delegate his.
So the president can delegate to me. The president himself cannot do it. What I'm saying, there are systems in place already
to check
which if we apply. If Civil Service Council apply, local government say that we will process you, and PSC also process you, and the Auditor General says, look, based on this principle, if your acting has not been processed by the governing council, we will not allow the whatever you have done, the businesses that you have signed. Then the loses it's tightening, and then everybody will stand up. Right. So that's my take on that.
Before I bring you in your almost near a date in office, have you encountered such political appointments of a kind? How were you able to navigate
the ladies thing happened during my time.
Okay.
It happened during my time. That's why I'm able to tell you that the council will not agree. We informally had discussions with the office of the president, even the minister of local government. But that's where this issue came in, that they felt that this body is no longer a civil service body.
Okay.
So that's what. So really, the issue of acts and death in particular is that there is a problem of interpretation of the status of the organization. That's all. That's what the problem. If it's clear that it's going to be a civil service thing, these things will not, because this thing had not happened prior to this act being passed. Let's remember, it's always been headed by civil service people until this act was passed. So that's a history. So you should also look at that. So why do we have that and that problem now? It's because what is also not clear, because they did not appoint a governing council. So CLOSAC is right, and the Civil Service Council is right in saying that as long as there's no governing council, then we are the governing council. So if we are the governing council, then that person being appointed is a politically exposed, and we will not agree to that. So that's the thing.
Thank you. Dr. Wesley, going to say something?
Yes. I am happy about the fact that, as Nana stated, there are certain fundamental principles that must be established and that must be used to build a civil service. And the American position when it comes to the civil service, building a civil service, is that the civil service is part of the executive. And it was on the basis that they had a sports system whereby whenever a new party wins power, you come in there, you sack all those from middle level, topmost, and then you staff them with your own people. And so the Americans have struggled still to have an independent and an initial civil service. The European perspective, at the end of the day, is that the civil service should be an independent organization that says whichever government comes into power, and whether the servants at the topmost, that's the bureaucratic elite, whether you appointed them or they were appointed during your time or not, you certainly have to keep them there until they go on retirement, of course, subject to good behavior. And so there has been performance. So there has been this kind of struggle in terms of the principles and in terms of the values that should be used to build a civil service. And so those who really will affirm the American position of the civil service being of the executive and the struggle to actually detach the civil service from the executive certainly will not see a problem maybe if an executive appointing, let's say, a head of this registry, as Trump is doing up there. But from the European perspective out there of state building, if you really want to build that civil service, that neutral, non-partisan organization, which was done, as I said, before this multi-party democracy came, you cannot attach that civil service as part of the executive. So as we move forward, it is very important that as a country we have to be very clear on which principle that we are building the civil service. Otherwise, we will sit and continue to sit and see things like, for instance, the Ghana Education Service moving out of the civil service, and then there people can just contest and compete for political offices and then without any kind of ramifications, or being within the Ghana Health Service and people say, we are no longer under the civil service or under the office of the head of civil service, and so become a party chairman, a constituency chairman for party A or party B, and nothing really will happen to me. But if you are working within a ministry as a director, then, or as a chief director, then we are saying that, oh, for you, you are bounded by the civil service rules, so for you have to be neutral. It is very important that we have to establish clearly what kind of principles that we are using to build a civil service, so that even if tomorrow a particular organization or association moves away, like we've had the local government service, it will not become possible now for them to say, now we are on our own, we are no longer under the office of the civil service, so now we can contest for political party positions. And it is one thing that we have not done very well in this country. And so that's why you have a Supreme Court that will rule that if you are in the Ghana Education Service, for that one, you can contest for party chairmanship, party whatever, and then that one, it is accepted. You are not part of the civil service. But if you are within the ministry as a director, chief director, that one, you are caused by the law. You cannot contest. I mean, what kind of country then are we building? And so if in the ministry, that one, you can't contest. But if you move out or you are posted out, you are shipped out, or you resign, you find a position in the health service, then that one you can contest. And so we have lost our focus in terms of, one, what kind of civil service are we building? Are we really seriously interested in building a civil service that is non-partisan, that is impartial, that is permanent? If we want to do that, then it is very important that we have to really carefully think about the principles that must be used and that have been used by other countries. We have to also carefully think about how the principles align with the entire political system that have been created, because we can't have a strong competitive multi-party democracy where you are changing government every 4 years and then still attach the civil service to it as part of the executive and then expect that it's going to be partisan, it's going to be permanent. It is never going to work in that particular way. So we have to, in building a civil service at the end of the day, that wherever you find yourself, whether you are in education or health, we allow all those to happen, and we are losing, the essence of the civil service. We are losing.
I know, but I think we are having a conceptual problem here. I think from Doc's position, I think it's conceptually I disagree with. But constitutionally, the civil service is different from health service. They are not part of the civil service. They are not.
Yeah.
So it's a conceptual issue. If you are talking of a non-partisan public service, that's a different matter. But these, once they get out of the civil service, the law establishes them as separate services. So they are not part of a service. I'm not saying I agree with the concept that you live today, you are part of Ministry of Health, you become head of service, then tomorrow you can do politics. That's a different. I'm saying conceptually, they are not part of the civil service. So when you are defining the concept of anonymity, permanent impartiality, and all that, in relation to the civil service, let's define it properly. When you bring all these things into it, I think you muddy the waters. They are different. If local government service, health service people are doing politics, I'm not saying it is what they do, but I'm saying by the law, they are not part of the civil service. We don't define them as civil service. Those that we define as civil service are quite clear in the Civil Service Act, and they are not supposed to be political. The reason why it's very difficult to be seen to you are coming to work with Vista. Let's be honest. I'm coming to work with you, and you've stood on the platform and you have said things against you. Then tomorrow I come and you are the same chief director. How? Nobody can accept that. That one is not an issue. The issue of being part of the executive is not the creation of me or someone. We have the judiciary. It's there. The judiciary has got its own composition. It's composed, the courts and all that. You have parliament. That's its composition. The executive has got its composition, and the civil service is part of the composition of the thing. You see, you keep on saying that we cannot have a competitive. I disagree with you. Because in UK, they have this competitive thing. It is there. You had a competitive thing in Singapore, Rwanda, you have them. Botswana, you have them. Of course, you can say that for a long time, they were one party. So that might have formed a set. But the key issue is more values. For me, it is more values than anything. It's more of what you see. Let me tell you, when I became head of civil service, just changing government, nobody has done that. I matched all the chief directors. We sought for meeting with the president. The president listened to him. Though he'd been a minister before, Attorney General and all that. You see, it's a bit different. That you have just a sectorial perspective. And I explained to him in that meeting what the civil service by the law, what our position, how chief directors are appointed. Everybody was there who had to be there, the chief of staff and blah, blah. How they are appointed, the fact that they are non and all that. And I'll never forget, after that meeting, almost 2 hours. You know, president's time, 2 hours is a lot of time. And everybody was there. He finished and said, look, Nana, this he said, I remember, this meeting has been useful. You have clarified a lot of these things. Check the records. It is only the civil says that nobody was sacked. Check the records. At that time, not one. Well, because
the fact that data shows that your tenure was well.
No, that's I'm trying to say. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You see, when I talk of professionalism, being proactive, explaining things to people, it helps. If you just want to use legislation alone as a basis for getting this or litigation, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Some of these things are done through engagement, through being proactive, through showing yourself that you have an understanding also. But you will not always win. And if you want, I can come another time and I'll tell you that I did not always win.
I think at those juncture we need to call for water break.
Okay.
This is becoming like what do you call it? A competitive football match.
Yes.
And the sun is hot, so that we can re-immigrate and come back.
Yeah.
So you are still with us. So back with you soon. Welcome back. This day we are discussing the way forward as far as neutrality anonymity and permanence in the civil service is upheld. And as usual with me, I have Nana Ajekum Dramina, the immediate past head of the civil service, then Dr. Daniel Appiah, who is a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, and I'm your host, Cephas Na Dosu. Nana, I want to come back to you again. It's not easy to get you. Once you get you, must tap into your depth of knowledge.
I'm always yours obedience.
How do you think that the civil servants can be sorry? It's not civil servants, because that creates some element of servitude. So it's rather civil service staff. Civil service staff. So how do you perceive a civil service staff can be empowered to resist political influence, remain neutral, be professional, and yet not exposed to political intimidations?
Okay. I don't know whether resistance is the appropriate word in this particular instance. But you see, the systems that are in place, we must make that is one. Two, we need to build the capacities of our staff so that they have better understanding of all these things. The values, the norms that we are talking about should properly be inculcated. We tried during the programs, it is done, they are told. During interviews, we ask someone. So the value, the norms are there. At the senior levels, usually at the lower levels, we don't. But at the senior levels, I think like what CLOSAC is doing, it's taking this as part of the major agenda, which is good. I think CLOSAC must be commended for doing that. So I think the set itself must do a bit more than the occasional civil service we mention it. We need to do a bit more than that. In terms of, let's understand this principle clear. Where the quote-unquote interference is going against established norms, principle, like somebody being appointed in Ministry A, the governing council, the PSC, must come to our work run. The Auditor General must come in and say that in their auditing, they realize that this person has not been properly appointed. So that person, all those things should be done properly. So that is one side of it. So all these organizations must do. But then when it comes to the individual staff at the senior level, all that you can do, and I'll say that, one, the people of Ghana did not appoint you. They do not vote for you. They voted for President Mahama and his team. Your job is an advisor. Your job is to guide. Your job is to tell truth to power. That's what you can do. And once you've done that, your job is finished. As to whether they will take it or not, it's a different matter. I've had given advice and it's not been taken. And I can tell you that people came back later and apologized, but I wasn't going to move. That was one. I remember somebody said in a meeting, big meeting, he said, look, let this man talk, because if you don't listen later, it will come back and it will bite you. I'm saying, look, the chief directors, they can't do much by way of insulation. What they can do is behave as professionals, do their work properly, and that is all that they can. You see, some of these things. Let me also say this: the insulation is not only through what you call normal systems. Sabas, I can be with you. I'm a minister. I don't like you. Okay, but I know Agridaco will not agree to post you because it's permanent. So what do I make life difficult for you? That one is not recorded anywhere. And I can make life difficult for you. Last minute, I give you a speech. Speech is supposed to delay.
A case that I know of where someone within 2 years postings.
Okay. Maybe I didn't want me to go to that. I'll go there. Some of those people I know civil service staff. They went on postings because they were not performing. The problem at times is that our staff are praised. I wonder how some of them become.
We will come there in terms of performance.
So don't always say people move around because of politics. At times it's performance. Everywhere they go, even the chief directors they say, okay, and I beg you, ask for this guy, don't bring me. Before I left, we had 3 or 7 people. Nobody wanted them. It's not the politicians. The chief directors don't want them. But unfortunately, we have signed from AD1 or something. You've done the appraisals, and it's good, and it's good, and it's good, and somehow they managed to go through, and they passed. Because they can speak good. These people, there are people who don't perform. It is one of the reasons why we change performance appraisal system, interview system, to a different one, where if you will not pass. You understand? It's part of that problem.
Doc, I'll come to you. I want to still remain with Nana. Performance should be measurable, should be smart.
Yeah.
So on what basis? Because I know for most of these ministers or for these postings or whatever sanctions or internal realignment that is done, the references are very basically perceptual. Oh, those guys don't perform. What is the basis?
What I'm saying
because is, I know if you have some KPIs, you have started to perform this index and you had this, then it's okay. This person I'm talking to you, if I'm talking about, if I mention his name, you would say, for this person, nobody can tell me he didn't perform.
No, I'm not, maybe you don't understand. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just trying to say, some people get, some may be attitude, some may be pressure, some may be because, look, I have seen where chief directors were moved, not because the chief directors were performing. Nothing. They were moved because the chief directors themselves came and said, no, we can't work with this man. I'm saying because of these things, it's not recorded anywhere. It's not recorded anywhere. The guy goes in the morning before he's called his directors and they're having a meeting. The chief director is not part of it. As you want to, there's a program you want to attend, he will just say, no, you can't attend. You understand those frustration comes in imperial tactics, so that then any chief director that I moved during my time, apart from normal posting, was because of this. There are cases where chief directors were virtually dying. I mean, there took big people and then they were losing meat or form, literally. So it's not those ones. Those postings are there. Politicians will always want people who are malleable. That's true. And politicians also want people who come and do concern. Your own people, they do that. So that is also true. But it all depends on also leadership. We need to at times stand firm. We need to stand behind the civil service staff. And we also need to be persistent in that kind. People get wrong, unfortunately, because of their own non-performance. But others, for one reason or the other, may become victims. I can understand that. And that is possible, that they may be victims. Those ones, again, comes back to leadership. Head of civil, would you pose that person or will you not pose that person? Would you listen to them? Will that person be comfortable? See, at times you don't understand some of this. Will that person be comfortable there? Will he be able to perform? Is his life is in danger? Not in terms of somebody shooting him. But look, somebody like yourself, if you go to work for even 2 weeks and you don't have work to do, something will happen to you.
It's true.
You understand what I'm saying? So all those are tricks, nuances that this politician may deploy. And when I'm not saying it is good, but I'm saying these are realities. And the only way you can deal with that one is either through a rigorous appraisal system. That is why we changed the system for appraising staff and for interview, so that you realize that it is based on work, where you are, and that, and the strength of the institution, head assistant, council, trying to empower, of course, and learning and all those. But we must be able to separate where your thing ends. You are supposed to give advice. They are not supposed to be emotionally invested in your advice.
Thank you, Doc. You see, as much as we expect the politician to not to respect these principles of neutrality, permanence, and what have you, we also expect same from the civil servants.
Yes.
In upholding these principles, sometimes the civil servant is subjected to what I may term as psychological abuse. So some of the things that Nana had mentioned, you go to work and you are not given the necessary tools to work with, or you are not, sometimes you go and you don't even have an office to sit in, or you are posted all kind. In the face of these what do you call it, psychological intimidations, can the civil service staff resist the temptation of falling prey to these intimidations and singing the song of the politician, and for that matter, assuming some political colors?
Well, say first, fundamentally in this country, we have not defended what we created as a civil service. We've not. Because just before, when we went on the break, I made a statement that as independence, our civil service comprised or included the education service, the health service, the judicial service, and then all that. And then as politicians, and then maybe some other stakeholders or some other took those organizations out of the civil service, we must defend the organization called the civil service, and we sat down service to be to the point that now some or many accept the situation status quo as we find ourselves in now and think that, well, it is okay. For me, it is not okay. Ghana did not innovate a civil service. We are trying to build an organization on principles that we didn't innovate. So it is very, very important that we understand those principles very, very well at the end of the day. The principles do not admit of a partisan president appointing or having a role in the appointment of a director or a chief director. If we are not willing to defend a civil service and take away those kind of rules, then we should not, at the end of the day, sit and then think it is possible to go and defend a person somewhere out there who want to do the right. Everybody wants to rise to the top and to become a director or a chief. And when it comes to appointment, if the rule, once again, if we go to the law, sections 19, the appointment of a chief director, the president appoints in consultation, blah, blah. The appointment of a director, the president shall appoint in consultation, blah, blah, blah. That is not how the advanced economies develop their civil service. That is not the civil service that we developed at independence. That's not the civil service that made Ghana to become Ghana. If we are sat down and then the civil service has been balkanized and be destroyed to this level, and now we have a very very small civil service out there, what we are going to see going forward is that the department under the civil service are going to also be taken away one by one and be created into authorities, autonomous authorities outside of the ministries. And so the defense must start from a defense of the very principles upon which we are building the civil service. Once we do that, then we can then educate people, educate the politicians, educate the civil servants, educate stakeholders about what kind of principles that we are building the civil service. In my class, if you find, you meet students coming from Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service, Ghana Health Service, and you ask the person, are you a civil servant or a public servant? The majority don't know where they belong to at the end of the day, because previously that is not the kind of system that we had. So let us set the principles very clear and then very soundly before we can go out there to preach to any stakeholder that this is what the civil service is about. That's why I'm happy about resetting the civil service. It is time for us to reset the civil service. If we cannot bring back some of those who have left, those that are left, as we now amend the law or we now revise the law, let us have a clear law that lists those organizations in there. That going forward, this is our civil service. These are the organizations, the ministries and the departments that form part of the civil service. Appointment into those organizations will be neutral, will be non-partisan. And if someone is suffering from some kind of psychological abuse, bullying, like the UK case, Priti Patel, the topmost head, one of the topmost heads of the civil service, when she lost her job at the end of the day because she felt being bullied by a politician, and then she resigned, she left. She went to court and she was compensated hugely, more than £300,000. Do we have a system here that at the end of the day can stand up and then defend the civil servant? Do we have a judiciary that is, independent, reputed to be independent of political or executive kind of interference? Of course, I am speaking on the grounds of what are in terms of assessment of what our judicial system has now come to be. So unless we can build independent organizations that can really defend the civil servant who feels being abused or bullied by the politician, there is no way that we can actually defend the civil servant. Unless we can really set the ground rules very clear going forward. As Nana rightly stated, nowhere in the Births and Deaths Registry Act does it say that this is a civil service organization. If we don't have a legal framework that clearly defines the civil service organizations going forward, then on what basis, for instance, on what strong basis is one going to fight and say that, the appointment of the registrar into that organization compromises the rules and the values of the civil service? So the point is that let us defend the principles of the civil service and let us resist, and I agree with him, let us resist encroachment on the organizations of the civil service. We should not sit and then when now organizations are taken away, when they are balkanized, and then we say, okay, what is left? Now this is the civil service. In terms of law, this is the civil service. So what is left? That one, it is no longer part of the civil service and so they can do their things. No, we cannot build this country on this kind of path that we've taken. We are on a very wrong legal path. We have pursued very wrong legal kind of paths that have led to the loss of many organizations under the civil service. And it will continue if we do not really protect it. Otherwise, in fact, it will become very, very difficult for me as a Ghanaian, as a human being who want to rise. And then if at the end of the day, some politician somewhere, is manipulating me or is trying to do something, and I know that maybe my next level is the director or chief director that I want to aspire to. Will I have the energy, the confidence, the zeal to actually resist some of the political encroachment? So let us really build independent organizations that will protect the civil servants. At the same time, let us also be very clear. What are the principles? What are the legal frameworks that are there as we move forward that will define clearly as the civil service? If we are not able to do that, I tell you, the movement of new public management and others that are now transforming departments into autonomous agencies, many of the agencies are going to transform into autonomous ones. Once they are transformed now, we will say that, they are no longer with the civil service. And so now any politician now can appoint at the end of the day. Since the coming of this new government, look at those who have been losing jobs. It's not in the civil service. The autonomous organizations, some of my family members themselves are affected. Those who got jobs in autonomous organizations, Ghana Maritime and other places, because at the end of the day, those are not civil service posts. But he did very well in protecting what he came to actually meet, to the point that at the end of the day, it is still there. Going forward, those who have taken over from him, they also must do better and then protect what is left. If you are not able to do that, there is no way that, because as the partisan contestations deepens and heats up, everywhere the evidence is the same. To Zambia, even South Korea today, or Britain, as the partisan contestations deepens, every politician will want to interfere in the civil service. And so,
thank you, Doc.
We have to do what
I agree with you. We need to protect the civil service, but then most often, you would realize that when a civil servant tries to more or less resist political influence or temptations, he becomes a subject of political harassment. And most often, it appears as if he's left alone. And I don't know what happened during your era or what you propose. For instance, you have the Civil Service Council, you have the heads of the classes, you have the union. You know, how can these organizations and leadership come together to protect the integrity of the civil service by protecting the civil service staff?
Two things. Number one, let me just make a small point about what he said about directors and chief directors being. I think the way he presents it rather shows that as if the civil service system for promotion is manipulated by the president. I don't think it is right. And it doesn't show the right picture. For anyone to become the law says he must be appointed by the president. But this is the process. At least for 9 years. It's a simple process. You go through the appraisal system. Yeah, we are the people who send the people to PSC.
Yeah.
Directors. OACS sends the directors to PSC. OACS pays for the interview. When the people have been interviewed and the results brought, it is the Civil Service Council that signs off and it goes to the president. For all the director who has passed was brought back and said it was not passed. So at least that concept of appointing and promotion is not affected by this. I think if we just see the president comes and directly appoints something, you are distorting the facts. That is not the fact. Yeah. That is not the fact. Number two, with the appointment of chief directors. It doesn't matter who comes. We used to advertise. In the last 3 years or 4 years, we stopped the external, we did internal advertisement. What happens is that they go through, even before go to PSC, there's a 3-stage process, rigorous process. I'm not saying politicians don't bring their people. I'll be lying. No, they'll bring their people. Because when you advertise, somebody says, no, my brother, my MPP man. I said, no, we don't have a problem. You can apply, but you will go through the rigorous process. There was a point when you had about 45 people going through, it was about 90. We ended up 45 people going through for the interview. Majority of the people from our side did not pass. Majority of them did not pass. Went through the process, went through the president. The president did not say that because my friend, and then no president came to us anyway, unless they came through that. So I'm saying the system now is a bit rigorous. I'm not saying because of that there's no, but no. When people come through the interview, from wherever they come from, and they pass the interview, they have passed. That one, you can't use that as a basis to say because Prof came from Legon and he went through the system. If he did not pass, he will not go through. So if it's passed, you cannot say because there's a political interference. I think that's an insult to those of us who sit on us and our intelligence and our ability to do professional work. I found that insulting, I must be honest. Anytime I heard that, I felt that insulting. Because I've never said, if you can go ask them, if you want to play any trick and you say, you gave this man, let's say 20, and I gave him 2 or 3, I'll ask permission of the PSC chair, whoever says, what did you hear that you're able to give this guy 2 or 3? I say, they will tell you, it's a historical fact. No, you can't. I don't see how you can be able to give this guy. In any case, I'm the one going to work with the person. And I don't think, and more than not, people are able to, are convinced that no, maybe if they have some agenda, is killed in the name of Jesus. Straight away. So I'm saying, you're talking of protection. Yeah. This is a case of protection. Where I will always insist on merit, being professional, and you see the point about people standing up and being politically. Look, this thing is overflow. I mean, let's be realistic. How many people really, at least in the 90s, that I became, were really targeted for me. You don't have the stats. I mean, you at times you have the tendency. I know if it's one person, it is bad. Even if it is one person.
Yeah.
But you should not present the issues as if it's a general thing in the civil service. Definitely it will happen. Everywhere it happens. Even your own ministry or your own organization. Don't attempt your head of departments, against somebody and they shape it to another region. You people, even you do it. Don't you even do some political, but you do it. Heads of department, don't they shape people out there? They do it. So that is it. But I'm saying when people are directly being confronted for political reasons, I know the heads of services have stood up.
Yeah.
At least I can mention the time of Mr. Dr. Jodu was one, Mr. Kemavo was one such person, and myself also. We stood up on there are systems already in place, but what I'm saying, we need to strengthen the systems a bit more. PSC must be stronger, Civil Service Council must be stronger, and then maybe that will work. But if you don't like it, make about the Patel case. You can still go to court and get the thing. The chief director who went, he did not go for damages. He went for him to be brought back, and he was reinstated. So if they sack you, but what people forget, you see, all our letters of appointment has got this clause. It's there. It says that you can be retired or sacked or something with 3 months' notice. It's in our letters of appointment. People don't know that. So if in your letter of appointment it says 3 months, and the president gives you 3 months' notice, he has not violated any law. Yeah. Has not violated any law. That's the truth. So maybe if it's something we need to change, because we are talking of permanence, but it's there. From director up, civil service council, we have agreed, we put it in the law. But that's one of the things I find that we are talking of permanence. Then we are saying it's not the transition bit. It says that you can be sacked with 3 months' notice. That for me is not a problem. That thing maybe should be removed
without reason.
Yeah, it can be removed. It's there. It's in the law. What the president can terminate you too, if you want to terminate, you can also give president 3 months and you can go. It's there. And those things were not put there by politicians. We put them ourselves. We're not of it.
Okay, so there was this angle you introduced about performance. Yeah. And I commended you for the e-SPA you introduced. How
and e-recruitment and all the
exactly, the e-recruitment as well. Yeah. You see, most often there's the perception that the civil service is not productive.
Oh, did you?
I mean, there's that perception.
Okay. Yeah.
And in curing that ill, you must start from the individual civil service staff to the collective.
Yeah.
How do we ensure effective performance management and measurement? At least with the directors, you sign performance agreement with them. With those behind the ladder, they do the appraisal system and that kind of thing. But the point is that when it's being made, this person is not performing, so let's put him out of the place, bring somebody else. You don't see what data that backs that. So how can we handle this?
Let me tell you a very funny story. Somebody, a minister, said, this guy doesn't perform, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't have a problem. Can I get a staff appraiser? Something. The guy comes and what they are brought to be says, Cephas is excellent. So if he's excellent, why would I move him? You understand? People are afraid. In this, there's only one minister in 9 years who wrote and it was based on evidence. This one was supposed to be done this time. We had this meeting. The guy had taken notes. Apparently was doing this assessment with the chief director, and then the chief director recognized it. There's this and this. So when he wrote, it was I saw the chief director, this is what your minister is saying. The chief director could not respond. Because the guy was very factual. You see, there are ministers who are like that. They are very factual about what they do. So other than that, they say they cannot work with you. And this was a half-year review. And it was sad that, and I had to go and this negotiate said, oh, by the end of the guy, and thankfully by the end of the year there was improvement, and they all live happily. But performance is very important in this. The public perception of the civil service and performance is based on one, because that's the only area I agree with Doc, because people don't understand what is the civil service. They don't fully understand that the civil service is no longer Ghana Education Service. It's no longer electricity. It's no longer Ghana Water Company. It's no longer all those people. It's no longer even civil service, no longer AMA. So they go to AMA, they get bar service, and they say civil service. So that is the first one. I'm limiting myself to civil service. I'm not talking about public service. I can come to that. So that is part of the problem. Because of the lack of understanding. I remember when this, if you look on the discussion on the National Sports Scholarship Secretariat, you see that somewhere that, like, if you read some of the things online, these civil servants, sports National Secretariat is not part of the civil service. So civil servant. So somebody will say, yes, civil service. So you comment civil service. We are sitting here somewhere. We don't manage them. We don't direct them. So that's the first the enormous impression. Look, as he said, at least before I left office, in terms of assessment, in terms of evaluation, the civil service was far better, PSC themselves said it, was far better in terms of our performance management system than virtually all the performances in this country. PSC said that at one of our civil service week presentations. They said that. So it means the system we put in place is ensuring that people deliver. But you see, one of the things you have not attempted, the resources are not there. There are also major resource constraints, which can also affect performance. But in terms of the services we have and the discipline that we have, nobody will tell us that we are less performing. I won't say. I'll never say. Look, you know, there was a case recently where one of the services, they talk about recruitment, people having to pay X and Y amount of, it became a here, I won't mention the service. And it was so bad. So I had to even go and talk to some of the service heads and tell them, no, this is not good. Because when you do it, then they will say it's a civil service. There's been cases where people have been posted based on your capacity to pay. But you know, in our time, that will not happen. It never happened. I don't know what's happening, but never. Because after they've done the list, all the list, they bring the list, you look through, and I ask questions. You know me. I'll ask questions, why are you doing, what does it mean, blah, blah, blah. And it's, so the system is there, but the leadership is also important. I believe that the civil service generally performs far better than a lot of these organizations. If we are not performing, no politician, my last point, no politician should take credit for any performance. No politician should take credit for any performance. Because you work with us, we do the plans with you. We do the policies with you. We do the monitoring evaluation. We produce a report that is sent to a cabinet. When you are going to parliament and you are going to answer, it's a civil service that will write, you have information to go. So for any politician that talks of they be performing and they are saying the censor is not performing, it's inconsistent. It doesn't make sense. So for me, any politician who says has performed, that means the civil service has performed. For me, that is it. Period.
Right. Okay, let me take you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's on the same performance issue. I think Nana is right that you find many, if not the majority, of civil service staff who really are working very, very hard. And sometimes you go to pass by the Ministry of Finance, even pass around 6 p.m., 7 p.m. You see lights that are on, people who are working overtime. I think that one, if you look at the performance appraiser system, that is, and I thank Nana for bringing me in or recommend some of us to come in and then also help in the assessment and learn what is going on there. If you look at what's in there, you know, the staff with a superior, and then they agree on
targets,
and then also resources. And in many cases, the resources that are put there as requirement for the staff to actually deliver are not provided. So we have to look at that critically if we really want them to deliver targets that we have agreed. Because you don't agree with someone to deliver a target and then not to provide the resources. But even on that tangent, you find many civil service staff who from their own pockets
or innovative ways
are spending money to actually perform their responsibilities. So I doff my heart out actually to many civil servants who, or as Nana wants us now the new term, many civil service staff who are doing this. But I think one way that we can also improve and let the public know of what is going on is to maybe create a performance platform where the assessment of the staff across the various ministries, we can put it there for people to know that Ministry A, Ministry B, Ministry C, this is how far that they have actually performed after the annual performance appraisal has taken place. I think it will also encourage that kind of competition. It will also encourage the politicians and the ministers who are supervising their ministries to make sure that the resources needed by their staff actually is provided. Because if you find your ministry at the bottom, I don't think that next year as a minister, even you, it will be a bad image for you. So we should have some kind of an online platform where the performance that is going on out there, where the appraisals that have been done, is not just put on the shelf or it's not within the civil service, but the public must know what is going on. And then the other bit also is that I think people must take feedback seriously. Because performance appraisals are done, people sit down with their superiors, they agree on targets, and then people deliver. But in terms of feedback, how have you performed? Maybe you are my superior. How have you performed? How have you performed? What more needs to be done for you to actually perform? That is one area that they don't do very, very well. In terms of setting targets and then appraisal, those aspects are high, but in terms of feedback, it is actually it needs to improve. And on the same feedback, and that's why I said we need some kind of a platform where we can give feedback to the public that this is how our ministries are performing, just as we have.
Thank you very much.
Some of this during the civil service week.
So what I wanted to also know is about capacity building and orientation. Yeah. When new employees are recruited, you organize orientation, which also to some extent creates some awareness of expectations of them. Don't you think that as part of the orientations that are done for the political class when they come into office, we need to look at a segment that touches on the structure and the governance of the civil service and how the civil service supports the agenda of the governing power, so that this kind of issues of political interference and things can be a thing of the past?
Right, as you've hit on something that is very important and dear to me. And 2 weeks ago when I went to Parliament to deliver my stand, I pointed that one out too, that when the ministries come to present their programs, they should not be only interested in what are the goals, what are you going to do, but they should also be in the capacity bit. Because at the end of the day, if the capacity is not there, if you've not provided them adequate financial resources, adequate logistics to deliver, then at the end of the day, and you are looking at only the goals or what kind of objectives or programs they are going to actually implement, but you are not looking at capacity, then there is a lot that will not actually happen. And so it is very important that three things are very, very important for every elected leader or politician or minister to take seriously. One, the programs that the ministries and departments are bringing. Two, the capacity required to deliver. Is it adequate? Is it present? And then three, what are the targets? Have they met the previous target? If they've not met the previous target, what were the constraints? What were the challenges challenges? Where have they actually made also progress so that they can be celebrated? So those three things must be looked at. But if you pick the budget and you pick what at the end of the budget, many times it's about, we are going to do this, we are going to do that, we are going to do that. But the capacity bit is usually silent, or you don't see much of it. And so yes, you are right that we need to really pay careful attention, critical attention to the capacity bit in order to also improve performance of the civil service staff.
Thank you very much. All too soon, we are drawing the curtains down. But then I want to take the last words. Nana, what recommendations do you have, especially that would go to uphold the principles of neutrality, permanence, and take out political coloring in the civil service?
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this session. Two quick things. Number one, political interference will always be there. So I think we should be realistic. Yeah. You can never have this thing. No, then there's no power. Yeah. The key thing really is, what systems do we put in place? Yeah. How do we develop capacities of people, staff, to be able to stand some of these things? So we are talking about resetting the civil service. My first suggestion would be to His Excellency the President, that His Excellency the President, if somebody listens or tells that, please advise your ministers that the civil service is supposed to be neutral, it's supposed to be permanent, and it's supposed to give fearless advice. Let them listen to the civil service staff who are professionals, who are serving us, who have seen it all over generations, years upon years, and they have a lot of experience that will help. So that will be number one. Number two will be to the ministers. Please, I'm sure the head of civil service might have attended your oration, or will be attending your rotation. I think the things that he said, we must listen to it. Don't go into the ministry thinking that you know everything. The ministers, it's there. The ministers who perform really are those ministers who listened. The ministers who are hailed after they left office, or are those ministers who performed seriously, who listened, who did not behave as if they are 10 gods, who did not behave like they know everything. So that would be my advice to the ministers. Allow the system to work. If you have objections, let it be properly evidence-based, factual, and then I'm sure the head of sales and the sales will help you. So that the third one has to do with the various organization units, like the Office of Local Government Service, Office of Head of Sales, Civil Service Council, and Local Government, and one day and the Public Service Commission. Let's show ourselves a bit stronger. Let's ensure that the rules, the system that have been put down, we also apply them. Then my final thing is to the civil service staff themselves. Please behave like a professional. Be merit-oriented and stop undermining colleagues. Stop undermining people. Stop doing concern small, and allow the systems to work. Don't go and covet anything. I know there was one case where there was a director who acted a few times. Suddenly he has coveted, became friends with the minister. So when a permanent chief director was being performed, the minister was resisting. I virtually say this will not happen. And I'm hoping that the ministers will not allow that to happen. There's a great difference between a chief director and a director. They are different. Energy that is required, the skills that is required, the principles that go into the selection of a chief director is not the same. So those of you who are there and you are acting and you don't want to give way, you're part of the problem. You are part of why the anonymity thing is not working, why the transparency thing is not working, and why the permanence thing is not working, because you yourself are undermining the system. And I know that if we do these things, we'll go far. But thank you very much, Cephas, for hosting me. I really enjoyed coming here.
Whoa. Doc, can I take your...
Right, so Cephas, going forward, I think to protect the civil service and then make it more impartial and then support civil servants to be more anonymous, we need to recognize that the current civil service was actually enacted and made even on the 6th of January 1993. That was before even the first session of the first parliament had actually done. So it was done, in fact, outside of the democratic kind of environment, the ideas, the conception and all that. Because our fourth republic democracy actually started in January 1993. And so rules such as the president shall appoint a director in consultation with whatever, under a competitive multi-party democracy, it will surely be used at the end of the day as political party competition heater. It is time to really reset the legal framework, and it is my wish that the stakeholders will rise up and then defend the principles of the civil service as we reset the legal framework of the civil service. For instance, the civil service bill that currently, it was submitted to Parliament, as Nana himself affirmed. It was submitted to Cabinet before the current government came in. If you read the memoranda, they have put it in there now that the post of director should now be made a career post. And so I think that such kind of rules are in the right direction. It helps to at least give that chief director that kind of confidence, or give people within the civil service the confidence that so long as you are in there, if you deliver and you perform, you will also be able to rise up. And so let us do away with any kind of window that may be used by, of course, political parties and then elected leaders, to try to undermine or interfere needlessly in the work of civil servants. If we don't do that, and then we give room for legal rules that give room for the politician also to use to actually interfere or undermine the neutrality of the civil servants, then we have not done the best. Just as I said, our predecessors sat down for the civil service to be back eyes, and then now we have something very small. So it is up to us and stakeholders to make sure that we protect what is left and protect it very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And this all time will permit us. We've been discussing how to ensure that the civil service remains politically colorless through maintaining the neutrality, anonymity, and permanence of the civil service. And today, I've been most blessed and honored to have the immediate past head of civil service, Nana Adekunjamena, here with me. This is a man that I've learned a lot from. What many don't know is the fact that GIFMIS, as we have it now, gained its acceptance despite the initial resistance, because Nana Jamina, the man who steered the affairs of change management, he led change management. I was fortunate to have worked with him as his communication lead. And I'm happy to have you here this morning again. And we'll be inviting you here, boy.
I've learned a lot from all the practices. I've learned much from him as well.
Dr. Daniel Apia, we are happy to have you here. Given both the academic and the practical perspective to our discussions. The sweet ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Cephas Dusu. But before we go, I want to leave you with this takeaway. And it said that visible partisanship and over displays of lack of professional neutrality and objectivity would be a betrayal of the just expectations of the people of the Republic of Ghana, and would impair even further the efficiency and effectiveness of these governance services. This is all time will permit us. And from the view of Clock TV, I say thank you very much, all viewers, for being with us. I want to take this opportunity to also thank immensely the members and rank and file of CLOSAC, the National Executive Council, the Executive Secretary, Dr. Bomprado, my crew of Clock TV, and all those who have contributed to bringing this program to your various homes. Stay tuned, and soon we shall be locking on your doors through your TV set. This is Clock TV bringing you Reset Your Civil Service. Thank you very much.